George Soros has devoted money to causes such as ending the war on drugs in the United States, to promoting human rights and democracy abroad. Joining us now to help lay out what motivates his social and political activism is Anna Porter. She's a journalist and the author of Buying a Better World, George Soros and Billionaire Philanthropy. Hello. Welcome to the summer agenda. I know you've been on the regular season, but welcome to the summer. I want to start by asking, we've all heard the name George Soros. People know that he's, uber rich. I don't think people know too much more about him. So just kind of paint a picture. Who is George Soros?
He's a Hungarian-born American billionaire. He made his money in hedge funds when they were still in their infancy, and he made a huge amount of money out of that. And then he started currency trading. He shorted the British pound and practically collapsed the British currency by shorting the pound and made another killing. He has, in his lifetime, people who have invested with him in his hedge fund have all become very rich. Not as rich as he has, but very rich. So he is a financial wizard, a manipulator, and he is brilliant at it.
A great financier.
Absolutely brilliant.
Okay, we're going to go talk about his life and sort of go through it. But Hungarian-born Jew,
Yes.
He's a philanthropist. I mean, is there a link between how he was raised, how his childhood shaped his views, and what he does today?
Very likely. I certainly, I had the impression as I interviewed all the people around him that his childhood had a huge effect on, he was a Jew in Hungary during the war, and being a Jew in Hungary during the war was a fatal thing to be. Hungarian Jews were, 480,000 Hungarian Jews were murdered in various ways, mostly at Auschwitz, Birkenau. He saw firsthand the depredations of a dictatorship, a Nazi dictatorship. And at the end of the war, he saw firsthand what a communist dictatorship could do. He's practically allergic to dictatorships. His whole idea of an open society is really a reaction to what he himself has seen. Well, the open society idea was taken from one of his professors, Karl Popper, when he was studying at university, but he's developed it further. And a free press and humanitarian concerns, human rights, and all of those things which are an anathema to dictatorships were then and are still today.
And what got you interested in him?
Well, I got interested in him. I had just finished a book about Eastern Europe 20 years after the wall came down. And I wanted to see how Eastern Europe was adjusting to the new rules, capitalism, democracy, how they were dealing with people who had been informants and people who had been imprisoned under the communists. And I kept coming across his name. People mentioned him with a combination of awe and admiration, mostly, although they were already then, and this is a couple of years ago when I was finishing that book, they were already then detractors everywhere. And Soros himself is sort of philosophical about that. He said, well, I'm a real believer in freedom of speech and expression of opinion, and I have become a victim of my own beliefs because people are saying terrible things about him in Eastern Europe, where he was really instrumental in keeping a lot of people alive. Back when Solidarity rose to international fame, the union in Poland, protesting against the government, Soros was finding ways to slip money to Solidarity workers and to the intellectuals, the Polish intellectuals who supported them. And same in Czechoslovakia at that time, still one country, and in Hungary, Romania, and so forth. So he was greatly admired by the underdogs and somewhat feared by the regimes in charge, although I did interview the last communist president of Poland, and he had come around to thinking that Soros was actually instrumental in bringing the two sides together for an open discussion.
And you know what I find interesting about Soros is sometimes it's not really strident. Some people who are in awe of him also have a distaste for him. It's not like he's polarizing in some ways, but sometimes he's polarizing to an individual.
Yes, I found that. I found that people who had benefited from his largesse at some point in their lives now view him as somebody who interferes in things that he should not be interfering in, including the internal politics of countries, as far and wide as Liberia and Georgia. And he was very much involved in what has happened in Georgia over the past many years.
Right.
Since
we'll talk about the place in the world he's working tomorrow. But did you meet him?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
I
So
certainly
what were your impressions when you met him? Because his reputation is large.
He's not a large guy.
I'm saying his reputation is, but yeah. He's got a big personality, though.
He is. He dresses exceptionally well, really, really well. Which, of course, being
I was going to say billionaires. Yeah.
I mean, he probably has a lot of really good suits, and he's not a warm person. He's a hard person to get to know really well, despite the fact that he's open. He seemed very energetic, considering how old he is. I mean, he's into his
84,
80s,
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think he's about to turn 85. But he's not a young guy, yet he walks with, spring in his step and so forth. And he has a certain amount of charm, as somewhat, I shouldn't say self-deprecating, but in a sense, really self-deprecating. I mean, some of the things we talked about, some of the countries in which he tried to intervene and failed. He talks very openly about the beauty of failure, because you learn from your mistakes. That doesn't excuse his interference in the internal political workings of countries around the world, I don't think. But
He's not an apologist, though, is he?
oh gosh, no. No.
So I guess he doesn't see it as interfering. You're using the word interfering. Does he see it as interfering?
He sees it as helping to create a healthy, open society.
Right. So interfering for the right reasons, he would say.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't think he'd even use the word interfering particularly.
Okay.
Encouraging others to interfere, and he does use, he gives money to a variety of groups who are in the business of trying to topple governments.
I want to talk a little bit more about his background. Jewish guy escapes from the
He was hidden.
He was hidden
during the Holocaust.
Right.
His father was a very brilliant guy. He also wrote a book. Anyway, his name is Tivadar, very Hungarian name. He devised a method to save his family.
Okay.
So he passed for a Christian.
And how would you characterize George Soros' relationship with Judaism now and with Israel?
It's a very good question. I think he's being criticized a great deal by pro-Israel Jewish groups, and most Jewish groups are strongly pro-Israel, understandably so. He has steadfastly refused to, as he says, be one of the tribe. He doesn't give to Jewish causes.
To Jewish organizations?
No. And he doesn't support the American committee that is in the business of supporting Israel. He has made a number of speeches that are very critical of Israel, and he supports a number of foundations, organizations in the Palestinian territories, in Gaza in particular.
Is this because he believes in the two-state solution, or what's
He doesn't particularly talk about that. He thinks that Israel, or at least he says, that some of the politics of Israel have given rise to broader anti-Semitism in the world. Now, that is really tough stuff for a Jewish audience. And he has made these remarks to Jewish audiences. And you can imagine their reaction. So when I started working on the book, and people found out I was working on a book about George Soros, I got a huge number of emails, letters, and phone calls from people I knew, people I'd met, who knew I was working on it, and they wanted me to read certain things that George Soros had said, and things that had been said about him. I mean, on some, it's not an unfair criticism. If he weren't a Jew, he would be viewed as an anti-Semite. So in that, he has given to a Jewish organization, ORT, for example, an educational organization. And I think it's the only, and J Street, but then J Street is also critical of Israel.
Now, okay, you say if he wasn't Jewish, he'd be considered an anti-Semite.
Yes.
He is Jewish. Would you, after talking with him about this kind of stuff and observing and talking to others, would you call him a self-hating Jew?
No.
Why not?
Because he announces right away to any question that he is openly Jewish. And he says it with a certain amount of pride. So usually, and he's an unapologetic Jew. I watched him on a recent broadcast video from Budapest. He was talking about hiding during the Holocaust in Hungary. And there's no question as to where he stands and how he views himself and how he viewed the Yellow Star. But he thinks of himself as exceptional. In fact, he has once described himself as messianic, as somebody above the fray. So no, I wouldn't, he's not self-hating in any way at all.
Okay, given all that you've said, Anna, what guides this man's, what philosophy guides his thinking?
He developed his philosophy while he was in the full-time in the financial markets. He believes that there is no possibility of independently observing something in which you're an actor. And this applies to the financial markets. It applies to economics. He thinks economics is not a science because it's impossible to have
So objectivity
science.
doesn't exist.
Yes, it doesn't. It can't exist because he calls his theory reflexivity, and you are observing something, and yet you're part of this. Something that it could be life, it could be being on a television show, it could be mostly being an actor in the stock market, and by observing it, you are changing it. So your act of observation changes what you're viewing, and in a circular action, it then changes your views, and then your views again change, etc. And he believes this has been a life philosophy that has helped him understand economics, world affairs, and you can, and he's developed it and applied it and used, the market he thought and still thinks was a great way to test his theory, because on the way, as you're observing the market, you're trying to affect it on the way up, it overshoots, and on the way down, it overshoots. And this is, in fact, a phenomenon that other people have commented on, but not in this circular, and not trying to apply it to this television show. You're looking at me, and your reaction to me is affecting my reaction to you, and on and on.
Right, so we're participating in employing change as we go along.
I know, it sounds too simplistic, but it isn't.
I'm sure, like most philosophies, we can, summarize them in a sentence, or we can go on about them at length. We'll leave it there on that, except for to ask you this. Given his philosophical leanings, given his own philosophies, what kind of causes, he's involved in many, many things. So what's the through line on all these things that attracts his attention of his causes he does?
It's a combination of two things. Wanting to create an open society, a democratic open society with an independent judiciary and free press and all of those things that an open society would mean. In keeping that in mind, looking for opportunities where the time is right to do this. So he has appeared in Burma, Myanmar, at the time when change was in the air. So it's in Georgia when change was in the air. He was very effective in Eastern Europe when change was happening or was beginning. There were glimmers of hope for a change. His efforts are worldwide. He is active, or his organizations are active in 100 different countries now.
He comes in at the spring, whatever spring, doesn't wait till it's sprung.
Yes, he does, although he's not. He had an organization in Egypt, for example, but the person who ran it is now living in Paris. So, he was very, very optimistic about the Arab Spring. And he, I thought, might actually become much more involved, but he doesn't wish to have his people exposed to the possibility of being killed. And so he's had, some of them have been harmed. A guy called Kuni, for example, was killed in Chechnya, and he had been working for Arya Nair. Arya Nair was, became president of the Open Society Foundations and remained in that position for 25 years.
You could put Soros in a group of other billionaire philanthropists. There are a few in the world. What distinguishes him from, say, the Gates and the others? What makes this guy different?
I think partly that he's governed by a single idea. The single idea is expressed in a number of different ways, but it is always a single idea. It's a transformative idea in most cases. It's not, he always works, or his organizations work with people on the ground, because he believes that the people who are actually living there are the best people to advise. The fact that he is personally involved in his organizations to the point where he actually physically goes to the places where his money is going. He shows up in Ukraine when there is a Russian incursion. He shows up when Crimea is being taken. He shows up at trying to get the European Union to support Ukraine. he was himself personally in the former Yugoslavia, where he donated $50 million in Sarajevo to restore water
Right.
to the city.
So he shows up.
So he personally shows
Yeah.
up. You don't see Bill Gates showing up a whole hell of a lot, personally, which is not to say that his foundations aren't effective. They are effective. They're doing wonderful work, but they're not. It's not the way George Soros operates.
Okay, we're going to talk about the former Yugoslavia and Ukraine and other parts of Eastern Europe as they pertain to Soros's efforts tomorrow. I want to get back to this idea of the critics and the criticism, because there's a wealth of them out there. And they don't, well, I'm going to play a clip. This is Bill O'Reilly of Fox News talking about George Soros. Let's roll that.
Factor has been investigating far-left billionaire George Soros, a man who wants to impose a radical left agenda on America. And under the radar, he is making great progress. Soros has set up a complicated political operation designed to do two things: buy influence among some liberal politicians and smear people with whom he disagrees. So you can see how powerful this guy Soros has become. He can smear anyone he wants in a variety of ways. His organizations can raise millions for politicians who will do his bidding. Thus, he can demand that politicians running for office do what he tells them to do. If a liberal politician doesn't toe the Soros line, he or she will be denied funding and brutally attacked. Just ask Senator Joseph Lieberman about what Move On and Media Matters did to him.
Okay, Anna Porter. Here's Bill O'Reilly calling Soros far left, a radical with a radical left agenda, saying he has an enormous amount of influence. Is there any truth to what Bill O'Reilly is saying there?
Well, he tries to have influence. He is left of center in the American political context. He has become involved in a variety of ways in U.S. politics. He raised money with a fellow billionaire to try and stop George Bush's second term. Now, the fact is, of course, he failed. George Bush did come in for a second term. But he does try to have influence in American politics. He didn't become involved in American politics for a very long time. And had he stayed out of the U.S., I expect that he would not have come to Bill O'Reilly's attention. Or Glenn Beck's, for example. If you thought that Bill O'Reilly was anti-Soros, you should have heard what Glenn Beck had to say about him. But there have been books, some very well-reviewed books about Soros as the devil in U.S. politics.
But it is not just, yes, he is admonished by the right,
Yes.
the Bill O'Reillys and the further right, the Glenn Becks of the world. He does have his critics on from the left as well.
Yes, he does. The whole, the critics from the left really come at it in a different kind of way. Here is a man who has made a great deal of money. He's made a great deal of money by doing things like shorting currencies. Shorting currencies hurts the population in the country whose currency is being shorted. And here he is giving back some of what he took out. So it's in that sense. And the question of whether a billionaire should have a foundation, which is a tax shelter in the United States, and use his own money to influence American policies, such as the war on drugs. Should he be doing this? Well, that's what he's questioned on. Now, there's the Koch brothers, who are, exactly at the other end, and I'm sure that
This
Bill
raises
O'Reilly,
the question of whether people who aren't elected to office should be involved in politics.
That's right. And he's not been elected. and you know, never, and he's never even tried to be elected anywhere. And you know, he's being called a statesman without a state, and Ari Nair as his foreign policy expert. So he's not. But should he have that kind of power? Should he involve himself in politics in that way? Now, that's a question.
That's a question. Power does not exist in a vacuum. Thank you for telling us more about him. We'll talk tomorrow about his efforts in the former Eastern Europe and in the former Yugoslavia. Thank you.
Thank you.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit supporttvo.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.